Winter 73 BCE. Rome. The Curia. The Roman Senate set down the first report with open contempt. A disturbance at Capua, a handful of gladiators, escaped slaves, nothing more. The senators laughed, not loudly, not for show. The laugh of men who believed the world was already decided. Rome had crushed kings. Rome had broken Carthage. Rome had turned the Mediterranean into a Roman lake. And now, a slave army. The Senate's assumption was simple. Send a few soldiers, make an example, restore order. What they failed to grasp was that the man leading the escape was not thinking like a fugitive. Spartacus was thinking like a commander. And within months, Italy would learn a new kind of fear. Not fear of foreign invasion, fear of the people Rome built its empire on, turning around. 2. The impossible problem Rome ignored. The spark began inside a place designed for entertainment, a gladiator school at Capua, a factory for violence. Rome treated gladiators like property and slaves like tools. But the Roman system had a weakness. It assumed slaves could suffer forever without organizing. That assumption was wrong. In 73 BCE, around 70 gladiators broke out. They seized kitchen knives, then real weapons. Then they vanished into the hills. The Roman Senate barely looked up. Rome had dealt with slave trouble before. The Republic believed this would end the same way. Fast, quiet, forgotten. 3. Spartacus turns escape into war. Spartacus didn't run toward safety. He ran toward position. He took his people to Mount Vesuvius. To Rome, it looked like desperation. To Spartacus, it was a fortress. High ground, visibility, a defensible camp. And then, the first Roman mistake arrived. A Roman commander, sent with the confidence of routine policing, moved to trap the rebels. The Romans formed a blockade at the mountain's obvious route. They believed the slave army was contained. They waited. Spartacus did not attack the blockade head-on. He went around it. In the night, his people climbed down the mountain where Romans thought there was no path, using improvised ropes, vines, anything they could twist into strength. And at dawn, Spartacus hit the Roman camp from behind. A Roman force sent to clean up a problem woke up inside a disaster. It wasn't just a defeat. It was humiliation. 4. The math changes. Slaves become an army. That single victory transformed everything. Because when slaves hear that slaves can win, they stop thinking about survival. They start thinking about freedom. Across southern Italy, people ran toward Spartacus. Farm slaves, mine slaves, shepherds, workers from estates that fed the Roman elite. The Roman Senate had dismissed a riot. Now it faced a growing movement. A slave army measured not in dozens, but in thousands. Spartacus armed them the only way possible at first. Captured Roman weapons, tools turned into spears, improvised shields. But the weapons weren't the true transformation. The transformation was psychological. Spartacus taught them that Rome could be beaten. And once that belief spreads, the Republic starts burning from the inside. 5. Rome sends real force and still loses. The Senate's tone changed. Not to panic, not yet, to irritation. Rome raised larger forces and sent them south. And then came the second shock. Spartacus didn't collapse. He maneuvered. He attacked Roman detachments in detail. He struck where the Roman commanders expected slaves to fail, and he kept winning. In Roman thinking, disciplined war belonged to citizens and legions, not runaway property. But Spartacus used the very Roman countryside, roads, valleys, farms, as his supply system. Every estate was food. Every storehouse was fuel. Every victory armed more men. With each Roman defeat, the slave army grew stronger, and the Senate's laughter stopped completely. 6. Italy burns. Not one battle, but a spreading crisis. By now, the war was no longer a revolt. It was a fire, moving across Italy. Roman landowners fled. Rural villas emptied. Roads became dangerous. The Republic's wealth came from the countryside, and the countryside was turning hostile. Spartacus's forces moved like a storm front, not a single army marching in a tidy line, but a living pressure against the Roman system. Some cities locked their gates, some were spared, some were stripped of supplies. The goal wasn't always destruction, it was momentum, because Spartacus understood something the Roman Senate did not. A revolt dies when it pauses. A revolt lives when it moves. 7. The strategic crossroads, escape or conquest. At this point, Spartacus faced a decision that would shape the entire war. He could march north, cross the Alps, leave Italy behind. Many of his followers wanted that. Freedom was over the mountains. But victory creates its own gravity. Some wanted to stay. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted the wealth of Rome's estates. Spartacus tried to control a force that was no longer just soldiers. It was a mass of lives, anger, hope, and hunger. And Rome finally responded the way it responds to existential threats. It stopped treating the problem as a nuisance, and it handed the war to a man built for ruthless solutions, Marcus Licinius Crassus. 8. Rome adapts. Crassus turns the war into a machine. Crassus was not sent to win a battle. He was sent to end a phenomenon. He rebuilt discipline. He imposed brutal order on Roman units that had been embarrassed by slaves. He reorganized. He drilled. He restored fear inside the Roman army so it could project fear outward again. Crassus understood something fundamental. Spartacus's greatest weapon was movement. So Crassus would deny movement. He pressed the slave army south, toward the toe of Italy, toward the sea. And then Crassus did something symbolic and terrifying. He built containment, a line of fortifications, ditches and walls designed to trap Spartacus where Rome could strangle him. It was not just engineering, it was a message. Rome was done improvising. Rome was closing the fist. 9. The final collapse. The Republic crushes what it once marked. Spartacus tried to break out. He did, at least once. But the space was shrinking. Resources narrowed. Defections increased. The war that had spread across Italy was being forced into a corner, and Rome brought in more pressure. Pompey returned from Spain. Other commanders moved in. The Republic was making sure the slave army had nowhere to run. In the final battles, Spartacus fought like a man who understood history closing around him. Not a fugitive, not a bandit, a commander. The sources disagree on details, but the arc is clear. The Roman Republic ultimately overwhelmed the slave army through scale, discipline, and containment. Spartacus disappeared into the final violence of the fighting. His body was never reliably identified, and that, in its own way, became part of the myth. 10. Verdict. What Rome learned too late. The Roman Senate mocked a slave army because Rome believed power only moved one direction, from the elite to the enslaved, from the Senate to the countryside, from the legions to the world. Spartacus proved a truth Rome didn't want to acknowledge, that an empire built on bondage carries a hidden risk, because the people you force to build your world can also learn how to break it. For a brief, shocking time, a slave army made the Roman Republic feel vulnerable in its own land. And Italy learned that the most dangerous war is not always the one that crosses your borders. Sometimes it rises from inside your fields, inside your kitchens, inside your schools of violence. Sometimes it rises with a name Rome wanted to forget, Spartacus. And when it rises, it can set a nation on fire.